It was a beautiful morning on the island of Sodor. Thomas the Tank Engine blue paint sparkled in the sunshine as he puffed happily along his branch line with Annie and Clarabelle. He was feeling extra pleased with himself. "Hello, Thomas," whistled Percy. "You look splendid." "Yes, indeed," boasted Thomas. "Blue is the only proper color for an engine." "Oh, I don't know. I like my brown paint," said Toby. "I always been green. I wouldn't want to be any other color either," added Percy. Well, anyway," huffed Thomas, "blue is the only proper color for a really useful engine. Everybody knows that." Percy said no more. He just grinned at Toby. Later, Thomas was resting when Percy arrived. A large hopper was filling his trucks filled with coal. Thomas was still being cheeky. "Watch out for those silly cars," he said. Go on," muttered the cars. "And by the way," went on Thomas, "those buffers aren't look very safe to me." The last load poured down. "Help! Help!" cried Thomas. "Get me out!" Percy was worried, but he couldn't help laughing. Thomas's smart blue paint was covered in coal dust from smoke box to bunker. "Ha ha!" chuckled Percy. "You don't look really useful now, Thomas. You look really disgraceful." "I'm not disgraceful," choked Thomas. "You did that on purpose. Get me out." It took so long to clean Thomas that he wasn't ready in time for his next train. Toby had to take Annie and Clarabelle. "Poor Thomas," whispered Annie to Clarabelle. They were most upset. Thomas was grumpy in the shed that night. Toby thought it a great joke, but Percy was cross with Thomas for thinking that he made his paint dirty on purpose. Fancy a really useful blue engine like Thomas becoming a disgrace to Sir Topham Hatt's railway. Next day, Thomas was feeling more cheerful as he watched Percy bring his cars from the junction. The cars were heavy and Percy was tired. "Have a drink," said his driver, "then you feel better." The water column stood at the end of the siding with the unsafe buffers. Suddenly, Percy found that he couldn't stop. The buffers didn't stop him either. "Oh!" wailed Percy. "Help!" The buffers were broken and Percy was wheel deep in coal. It was time for Thomas to leave. He had seen everything. Now Percy had learned his lesson too. He chuckled to himself. That night the two engines made up their quarrel. "I didn't cause your accident on purpose, Thomas," whistled Percy. "You do know that, don't you?" "Of course," replied Thomas, "and I'm sorry I was cheeky. Your green paint looks splendid again, too. In future, we'll both be more careful of coal."
He was taking empty cattle cars to a market town. The sun shone, birds sang. But Edward was heading for trouble. Come on, he puffed. Oh, oh, screamed the cars. Edward puffed and clanked, the cars rattled and screamed. Some cows were grazing nearby. They were not used to trains. The noise and smoke disturbed them. As Edward clanked by, they broke through the fence and ran across the line. A coupling was broken and some cars were left behind. Edward felt a jerk, but didn't take much notice. He was used to cattle cars. Bother those cars, he thought. Why can't they come quietly? He was at the next station before either he or his driver realized what had happened. When Gordon and Henry heard about the accident, they laughed and boasted. See, allowing cows to break your train. They wouldn't dare do that to us. We'd show them. Old Toby was cross. You couldn't help it, Edward. They've never met cows. I have, and I know the trouble they are. Some days later, Gordon rushed through Edward's station. Boop, boop. Mind the cows. Hurry, hurry, puffed Gordon. Don't make such a fuss. Don't make such a fuss, grumbled his coaches. A long stretch of line lay ahead. In the distance was a bridge. It seemed to Gordon that there was something on the bridge. His driver thought so too. Whoa, Gordon, he said and shut off steam. Whew, said Gordon. It's only a cow. Shoo! Shoo! He moved slowly onto the bridge, but the cow wouldn't shoo. She had lost her calf and felt lonely. Bleh, she said sadly. Everyone tried to send her away, but she wouldn't go. Henry arrived. What's this? A cow? I'll soon settle her. Be off! Be off! Bleh. Henry backed away nervously. I don't want to hurt her. At the next station, Henry's conductor told them about the cow and warned the signalman that the line was blocked. That must be Bluebell, said the porter. Her calf is here, looking for her mother. Percy will take her along. At the bridge, Bluebell was very pleased to see her calf again, and the porter led them away. Not a word. Keep it secret, whispered Gordon and Henry to each other. They felt rather silly, but the story soon spread. Well, 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 chuckled Edward. Two big engines afraid of a cow. Afraid? Rubbish, said Gordon. We didn't want the poor thing to hurt herself by running up against us. We stopped so as not to excite her. You see what I mean, my dear Edward? Yes, Gordon, said Edward. Gordon felt somehow that Edward saw only too well. is Thomas? He doesn't usually make us wait. Oh, dear, what can the matter be? Sang the fireman. Johnny's so long, and never you mind about Johnny, laughed the driver. Just you climb on the cab and look for Thomas. Can you see him? No, replied the fireman. There's Bertie Bus in a tearing hurry. No need to bother with him, though. Likely he's on a coach tour or something. He clambered down. Stop! Stop! I've got Thomas's passengers, wailed Bertie, roaring up to the gates. It was no good. Edward was gone. Bother, said Bertie. Bother Thomas's fireman not coming to work today. Why did I promise to help the passengers catch the train? That will do, Bertie, said his driver. A promise is a promise, and we must keep it. I'll catch Edward or bust, said Bertie. Oh, my gears and axles, he groaned, toiling up the hill. I'll never be the same bus again. Hooray, hooray, I see him, cheered Bertie as he reached the top. Oh, no, Edward's at the station. No, he stopped at a crossing. Hooray, hooray. Bertie tore down the hill. Well done, Bertie, shouted his passengers. Go it. Bertie skidded into the yard. Wait, wait, cried Bertie. He was just in time to see Edward puff away. I'm sorry, said Bertie. Never mind, said the passengers. After him quickly. Third time lucky, you know. Do you think we'll catch him at the next station, driver? There's a good chance, replied the driver. Our road keeps close to the line, and we can climb hills better than Edward. I'll just make sure. He spoke to the station master. Bertie and the passengers waited impatiently. Yes, we'll do it this time, said the driver. Hooray! Called the passengers as Bertie chased after Edward once more. Grumbled the coaches as Edward snorted in front. They reached the top at last and ran smoothly into the station. Beep, whistled Edward. Get in quickly, please. The conductor blew the whistle, and Edward's driver looked back. But the flag didn't wave. Then he heard Bertie. Everything seemed to happen at once, and the station master told the conductor and driver what had happened. I'm sorry about the chase, Bertie, said Edward. My fault, replied Bertie. Late at Junction, you didn't know about Thomas's passengers? Beep, beep. Goodbye, Bertie. We're off, whistled Edward. 3 cheers for Bertie, called the passenger. Bertie raced back to tell Thomas that all was well. Thank you, Bertie, for keeping your promise, said Thomas. You're a very good friend indeed. Hat works his engines hard, but they are very proud when he calls them really useful. I'm going to the scrapyard today, Edward called to Thomas. What, already? You're not that old, replied Thomas cheekily. Thomas was only teasing. The scrapyard is full of rusty old parts and machinery. They're broken into pieces, loaded into cars, and Edward pulls them to the steelworks where they are melted down and used again. Today, there was a surprise waiting for Edward in the yard. It was a traction engine. Hello, said Edward. You're not broken and rusty. What are you doing here? I'm Trevor. They're going to break me up next week. What a shame, said Edward. My driver says I only need some paint, polish, and oil to be as good as new, but my owner says I'm old-fashioned. Edward snorted. People say I'm old-fashioned, but I don't care. Sir Topham Hatt says I'm a useful engine. What work did you do? My owner would send us from farm to farm. We threshed corn, hauled logs, and did lots of other work. The children loved to see us. Trevor shut his eyes, remembering. Oh, yes, I like children. Edward set off for the station. Broken up, what a shame. Broken up, what a shame. I must help Trevor, I must. He thought of all his friends who liked engines, but strangely, none of them would have room for a traction engine at home. It's a shame, he hissed. Then, beep, beep. Why didn't I think of him before? There on the platform was the very person. Hello, Edward. You look upset. What's the matter, Charlie? He asked the driver. There's a traction engine in the scrapyard, Vicar. He'll be broken up next week. Jem Cole says he never drove a better engine. Do save him, sir. He saws wood and gives children rides. We'll see, replied the vicar. Jem Cole came on Saturday. The Reverend is coming to see you, Trevor. Maybe he'll buy you. Do you think he will? Asked Trevor. He will when I've lit your fire and cleaned you up. The vicar and his two boys arrived that evening. Trevor hadn't felt so happy for months. He chuffered about the yard. Show your paces, Trevor, said the vicar. Later, he came out of the office smiling. I've got him cheap, Jem, cheap. Do you hear that, Trevor? Cried Jem. The Reverend saved you, and you'll live at the vicarage now. Beep, beep, whistled Trevor. Now Trevor's home is in the vicarage orchard, and he sees Edward every day. His paint is spotless, and his brass shines like gold. Trevor likes his work, but his happiest day is the church fair. With a wooden seat bolted to his bunker, he chuffers round the orchard, giving rides to children. Long afterward, you'll see him shut his eyes, remembering. I like children, he whispers happily.
Trevor, the traction engine, enjoyed living in the vicarage orchard. Edward came to see him every day, but sometimes Trevor didn't have enough work to do. I do like to keep busy all the time, he sighed one day. And I do like company, especially children's company. Cheer up, smiled Edward. The Fat Controller has work for you at his new harbour. I'm to take you to meet Thomas today. Ah, exclaimed Trevor happily. A harbour! The seaside! Children! That will be lovely! Thomas was on his way to the harbour with a trainload of metal pilings. They were needed to make the harbour wall firm and safe. Hello, Thomas, said Edward. This is Trevor, a friend of mine. He's a traction engine. Thomas eyed the newcomer doubtfully. A what engine? He asked. A traction engine, explained Trevor. I run on roads instead of rails. Can you take me to the harbour, please? The Fat Controller has a job for me. Yes, of course, replied Thomas, but he was still puzzled. Workmen coupled Trevor's truck to Thomas's train, and soon they were ready to start their journey. I'm glad the Fat Controller needs me, called Trevor. I don't have enough to do sometimes, you know. Although I can work anywhere, in orchards, on farms, in scrapyards, even at harbours. But you don't run on rails, puffed Thomas. I'm a traction engine. I don't need rails to be useful, replied Trevor. You wait and see. When they reached the harbour, they found everything in confusion. Trucks had been derailed, blocking the line, and stone slabs lay everywhere. We must get these pilings past, said Thomas's driver. They are essential. Trevor, we need you to drag them round this mess. Just the sort of job I like, replied Trevor. Now you'll see, Thomas. I'll soon show you what traction engines can do. Trevor was as good as his word. He dragged the pilings clear with chains and towed them into position. Who needs rails? He muttered cheerfully to himself. Later, Thomas brought Annie and Clarabel to visit him. Thomas was most impressed. Now I understand how useful a traction engine can be. The coaches were full of children. Trevor gave them rides along the harbour. He liked this best of all. He's very kind, said Annie. He reminds me of Thomas, added Clarabel. Everyone was sorry when it was time for Trevor to go. Thomas pulled him to the junction. A small tear came into Trevor's eye. Thomas pretended not to see. He whistled gaily to make Trevor happy. I'll come and see you if I can, he promised. The vicar will look after you, and there's plenty of work for you now at the orchard. But we may need you again at the harbour someday. That would be wonderful, said Trevor. That evening, Trevor stood remembering his new friend Thomas, the harbour, and most of all, the children. Then he went happily to sleep in the shed at the bottom of the orchard. Tried to make him better, but it was no use. Edward must take you to the works, said Sir Topham Hatt. Thomas felt very miserable. Then Sir Topham Hatt spoke to Duck. "I want you to help Percy and Toby while Thomas is away." Duck was delighted. He already knew Percy and soon made friends with Toby and Bertie. Terence the tractor gave him a big welcome too. "Take care of Thomas's coaches," he advised. "He's sure to miss them while he's away." Duck was very gentle with the coaches. Annie and Clarabel were impressed. Such nice manners, they told each other. It really is a pleasure to go out with him. When Thomas came back, Annie and Clarabel told him how well Duck had managed. Thomas was so pleased to be home that he soon forgot to be jealous. The works had left Thomas's handbrake very stiff. It made his brakes seem as if they were hard on, when in fact they were not. As a result, he and his coaches often overran the platform. Thomas found this most embarrassing. Gradually, his driver and fireman learned to be extra careful. But one day, Thomas's fireman was ill, and a relief man took his place. The fireman had fastened the coupling and joined the driver and station master on the platform to wait for Henry's passengers. The fireman had forgotten all about Thomas's handbrake. Thomas simmered happily. Not long now, he thought, as he saw Henry slowly approaching. But Thomas's brakes were not hard on, and suddenly he felt his wheels begin to move. He tried to stop, but he couldn't without his driver and fireman. He tried to whistle a warning, but he couldn't do that either. The conductor, driver, fireman, and passengers were all stranded on the platform. "Stop! Stop!" shrieked Annie and Clarabel. But Thomas, with plenty of steam, kept on going. The alarm went out down the line. "Stop the runaway!" There, ready for action, was Harold the helicopter. The inspector had made a plan, and together they took off into the sky. At last, Thomas was tiring. "I need to stop. I need to stop," he panted wearily. As they neared the next station, Thomas saw Harold land. They entered the platform slowly enough for the inspector to act. Judging his moment, the inspector scrambled into the cab and screwed the brake hard on. At last, Thomas stopped. Both he and the inspector were very relieved. Then they thanked Harold. "Think nothing of it." "Well, Harold, glad to be of service any time." "Phew," remarked the inspector. "We must never let this happen again, Thomas." Wearily, Thomas agreed with him.
One day, Henry wanted to rest, but Percy was talking to some engines. He was telling them about the time he had braved bad weather to help Thomas. It was raining hard. Water swirled under my boiler. I couldn't see where I was going, but I struggled on. Oh, Percy, you are brave. Well, it wasn't anything really. Water's nothing to an engine with determination. Tell us more, Percy. What are you engines doing here? Hissed Henry. This shed is for Sir Topham Hatt's engines. Go away. Silly things, Henry snorted. They're not silly. Percy had been enjoying himself. They are silly, and so are you. Water's nothing to an engine with determination. Huh. Anyway, said cheeky Percy, I'm not afraid of water. I like it. He ran off to the harbor singing. Once an engine attached to a train was afraid of a few drops of rain. No one ever lets me forget the time I wouldn't come out of the tunnel in case the rain spoiled my paint, huffed Henry. Thomas was looking at the board on the key. Danger. We mustn't go past it, he said. That's orders. Why? Danger means falling down something, said Thomas. I went past danger once and fell down a mine. I can't see a mine, said Percy. He didn't know that the foundations of the quay had sunk. The rails now sloped downward to the sea. Stupid board, said Percy. He made a plan. One day, he whispered to the cars, will you give me a bump when we get to the quay? The cars had never been asked to bump an engine before. They giggled and chattered about it. Driver doesn't know my plan, chuckled Percy. On, laughed the cars. Percy thought they were helping. I'll pretend to stop at the station, but the cars will push me past the board. Then I'll make them stop. I can do that whenever I like. Every wise engine knows you cannot trust freight cars. Go on, they yelled and bumped Percy's driver and fireman off the footplate. Ow, said Percy, sliding past the board. Percy was frantic. That's enough! Percy was sunk. You are a very disobedient engine. Percy knew that voice. Please, sir, get me out, sir. I'm truly sorry, sir. No, Percy, we cannot do that till high tide. I hope it will teach you to take care of yourself. Yes, sir. It was dark when they brought floating cranes to rescue Percy. He was too cold and stiff to move by himself. Next day, he was sent to the works on Henry's freight train. Well, chuckled Henry. Did you like the water? No. I am surprised. You need more determination, Percy. Water's nothing to an engine with determination, you know. Perhaps you will like it better next time. Percy is quite determined that there won't be a next time.
About it, but he works hard too and makes everything go like clockwork. It was a splendid day. cars and coaches behaved well. The passengers even stopped grumbling. But the engines didn't like having to bustle about. There are two ways of doing things, Duck told them. The Great Western Way or the wrong way. I'm Great Western and don't we know it? The engines were glad when a visitor came. He purred smoothly towards them. Sir Topham had introduced him. Here is Diesel. I have agreed to give him a trial. He needs to learn. Please teach him, Duck. Good morning, purred Diesel in an oily voice. Pleased to meet you, Duck. Is that James and Henry and Gordon too? I am delighted to meet such famous engines. The silly engines were flattered. He has very good manners, they murmured. We are pleased to have him in our yard. Duck had his doubts. Come on, he said. Diesel purred after him. You're worthy, said Topham Hatt to you, ordered Duck. Diesel looked hurt. Your worthy Sir Topham Hatt thinks I need to learn. He is mistaken. We Diesels don't need to learn. We know everything. We come to a yard and improve it. We are revolutionary. Oh, said Duck, if you're Rever Thingamy, perhaps you would collect my cars while I fetch Gordon's coaches. Diesel, delighted to show off, purred away. When Duck returned, Diesel was trying to take some cars from a siding. They were old and empty. They had not been touched for a long time. Diesel found them hard to move. Pull! Push! Backwards! Forwards! Oh-wee! Oh-wee! The cars groaned. We can't! We won't! Duck watched with interest. Diesel lost patience. Grrr, grrr, he roared. Gave a great heave. The cars jerked forward. Oh! Oh! They screamed. We can't! We won't! Some of their brakes snapped, and the gear jammed in the sleepers. Arr, grrr. Oh! Ha ha ha! Chuckled Duck. Diesel recovered and tried to push the cars back, but they wouldn't move. Duck ran quietly round to collect the other cars. Thank you for arranging these, Diesel. I must go now. Don't you want this lot? No, thank you. Diesel gulped. And I've taken all this trouble. Why didn't you tell me? You never asked me. Besides, said Duck, you were having such fun being Rev whatever it was you said. Goodbye. Arr, grrr. Oh! Diesel had to help the workmen clear the mess. He hated it. All the cars were laughing and singing at him. Cars waiting in the yard, tackling them with Diesel. Show the world what I can do, gaily boasts the Diesel. In and out he creeps about like a big black weasel. When he pulls the wrong cars out, up goes the Diesel. Arr, growled Diesel, scuttled away to sulk in the shed. Sulking, the freight cars would not stop singing rudely at him. Duck was horrified. Shut up, he ordered and bumped them hard. I'm sorry our cars were rude to you, Diesel. Diesel was still furious. It's all your fault. You made them laugh at me. Nonsense, said Henry. Duck would never do that. We engines have our differences, but we never talk about them to the cars. That would be disgraceful, said Gordon. Disgusting, put in James. Despicable, finished Henry. Diesel hated Duck. He wanted him to be sent away, so he made a plan. He was going to tell lies about Duck. Next day, he spoke to the cars. I see you like jokes. You made a good joke about me yesterday. I laughed and laughed. Duck told me one about Gordon. I'll whisper it. Don't tell Gordon I told you. And he sniggered away. Ho, 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 guffed the cars. Gordon will be cross with Duck when he knows. Let's tell him and get back at Duck for bumping us. They laughed rudely at the engines as they went by. Soon Gordon, Henry, and James found out why. Disgraceful, said Gordon. Disgusting, said James. Despicable, said Henry. We cannot allow it. They consulted together. Yes, they said. He did it to us. We'll do it to him and see how he likes it. Duck was tired out. The cars had been cheeky and troublesome. He wanted a rest in the shed. The three engines barred his way. Whoosh! Keep out. Stop fooling, said Duck. I'm tired. So are we, hissed the engines. We are tired of you. We like Diesel. We don't like you. You tell tales about us to the cars. I don't. You do. I don't. You do. Sir Topham Hatt came to stop the noise. Duck called me a galloping sausage, spluttered Gordon. Rusty red scrap iron, hissed James. I'm old Square Wheels, fumed Henry. Well, Duck? Duck considered. I only wish, sir, he said gravely, that I'd thought of those names myself. If the dome fits. He made cars laugh at us, accused the engines. Sir Topham Hatt recovered. He'd been trying not to laugh himself. Did you, Duck? Certainly not, sir. No steam engine would be as mean as that. Diesel lurked up. Now, Diesel, you heard what Duck said. I can't understand it, sir. To think that Duck of all engines. I am dreadfully grieved, sir, but know nothing. I see, said Sir Topham Hatt. Diesel squirmed and hoped he didn't. I'm sorry, Duck, but you must go to Edward's station for a while. I know he will be glad to see you. As you wish, sir. Duck trundled sadly away, while Diesel smirked with triumph. Duck, the Great Western engine, puffed sadly to Edward's station. It's not fair, he complained. Diesel has been telling lies about me and made Sir Topham Hatt and all the engines think I'm horrid. Edward smiled. I know you aren't, and so does Sir Topham Hatt. You wait and see. Why don't you help me with these cars? Duck felt happier with Edward and set to work at once. The cars were silly, heavy, and noisy. The two engines had to work hard, pushing and pulling all afternoon. At last they reached the top of the hill. Goodbye, whistled Duck, and rolled gently over the crossing to the other line. Duck loved coasting down the hill, running easily with the wind whistling past. Suddenly, it was the conductor's warning whistle. Hurrah, 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 laughed the cars. We've broken away, we've broken away. Chase him, bump him, throw him off the rails, they yelled. Hurry, Duck, hurry, said the driver. They raced through Edward Station, but the cars were catching up. As fast as we can, then they'll catch us gradually. The driver was gaining control. Another clear mile and we'll do it. Oh, glory, look at that! James was just pulling out on their line from the station ahead. Any minute there could be a crash. It's up to you now, Duck, cried the driver. Duck put every ounce of weight and steam against the cars. It's too late, Duck groaned and shut his eyes. He veered into a siding where a barber had set up shop. He was shaving a customer. The silly cars had knocked their conductor off his van and left him far behind after he had whistled a warning. But the cars didn't care. They were feeling very pleased with themselves. Beg pardon, sir, gasped Duck. Excuse my intrusion. No, I won't, said the barber. You frighten my customers. I'll teach you. And he lathered Duck's face all over. Poor Duck. Thomas was helping to pull the cars away when Sir Topham Hatt arrived. I do not like engines hopping through my walls, fumed the barber. I appreciate your feelings, said Sir Topham Hatt, but you must know that this engine and his crew have prevented a serious accident. It was a very close, shave. Oh, said the barber. Oh, excuse me. He filled a basin of water to wash Duck's face. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were being a brave engine. That's all right, sir. I didn't know that either. You were very brave indeed, said Sir Topham Hatt. I'm proud of you. Sir Topham Hatt watched the rescue operation. Then he had more news for Duck. And when you are properly washed and mended, you are coming home. Home, sir? Do you mean the yard? Of course. But, sir, they don't like me. They like Diesel. Not now. I never believed Diesel, so I sent him packing. The engines are sorry and want you back. A few days later, when he came home, there was a really rousing welcome for Duck, the Great Western Engine. Finding life difficult. Workmen were mending the viaduct on the main line. The arches needed strengthening. Sir Topham Hatt did not want to close the railway while the work was done, and so repairs took a long time. had to take great care when crossing the viaduct, and the delay often made them late on their journey to the junction, where they knew Thomas would be ready to collect his passengers. Thomas grew crosser and crosser. "Time's time," he grumbled. "Why should I keep my passengers waiting while Henry and James dawdle about all day on viaducts?" "Don't blame me," snorted Henry. "If we hurried across the viaduct, it might collapse, and then you'd have no passengers at all. What would you do then?" "Run my train on time for one thing," retorted Thomas. He hurried away before Henry could answer. Bertie was impatient too. He was timed to arrive just after Thomas. His passengers found that instead of going straight from the bus to their train, they were kept waiting till Thomas arrived. Soon Bertie grew cross with Thomas. "Late again," he remarked, as Thomas panted wearily in. "We may be friends, but I thought you could go fast, Thomas. It's time we had another race. I reckon I could beat you now." Thomas let off steam loudly. "Rubbish," he hissed fiercely. "It's those mainline engines. They dither about on the viaduct and then blame Sir Topham Hatt's workmen. It's just an excuse for laziness, if you ask me." One day, James was later than ever at the junction. "I'm sorry, Thomas," he puffed. "I was held up at the station, and the viaduct made it worse." "It's lucky for you I'm a guaranteed connection," grumbled Thomas. Before James could answer, he puffed importantly away. Come along," he panted to the coaches. Annie and Clarabel did their best, but Thomas soon found that he couldn't save much time. Suddenly, Thomas saw Bertie ahead. His radiator was steaming. "What's the matter?" asked Thomas. "You should be at the station by now. You're late." "I feel dreadful," moaned Bertie. "All upset inside, and driver says he can't make me better." "Thank goodness you're late too. Can you take my passengers, please? They'll never get home otherwise." "Of course," agreed Thomas. He now felt sorry for Bertie and promised to get help at the next station. Thomas set off again. Already he felt much more cheerful, and Bertie's passengers, travelling in Annie and Clarabel, all reached home safely. When Bertie was better, he came to thank Thomas. "I'm sorry I teased you about being late," he said. "That's all right," said Thomas. "I'm glad I could help. There are times when being late isn't such a bad thing after all." With a last cheerful greeting, the two friends went back to work. Thomas the tank engine has worked his branch line for many years and knows it very well. You know just where to stop, Thomas, laughed his driver. You could almost manage it without me. Thomas had become conceited. He didn't realize his driver was joking. Later, he boasted to the others. Driver says I don't need him now. Don't be so daft, snorted Percy. I'd never go without my driver, said Toby earnestly. I'd be frightened. Huh, boasted Thomas. I'm not scared. You'd never dare. I would then. You'll see. The next morning, the firelighter came. Thomas drowsed comfortably as the warmth spread through his boiler. Percy and Toby were still asleep. Thomas suddenly remembered. Silly stick in the mud, he chuckled. I'll show them. Driver said I could manage without him. I'll just go out. Then I'll stop and wheesh. That'll make them jump. Thomas thought he was being clever. Really, he was only moving because a careless cleaner had meddled with his controls. He soon found his mistake. He tried to whee, but he couldn't. He tried to stop, but he couldn't. He just kept rolling along. He didn't dare look at what was coming next. There was the station master's house. The station master was about to have breakfast. Horrors! Cried Thomas, and shut his eyes. The house rocked. Broken glass tinkled. Plaster was everywhere. Thomas had collected a bush on his travels. He peered into the room through its leaves. He couldn't speak. The station master was furious. His wife picked up her plate. You miserable engine, she scolded. Just look what you've done to our breakfast. Now I shall have to cook some more. She banged the door. More plaster fell. This time it fell on Thomas. Thomas felt depressed. Workmen propped up the house with strong poles and laid rails through the garden. Meanwhile, Donald and Douglas arrived. Don't fash yourself, Thomas. We'll soon have you back on the rails, they laughed. Donald and Douglas, puffing hard, managed to haul Thomas back to safety. Bits of fencing, the bush, and a broken window frame festooned his front, which was badly twisted. The twins laughed and left him. Thomas was in disgrace. There was worse to come. You are a very naughty engine. I know, sir. I'm sorry, sir. Thomas's voice was muffled behind his bush. You must go to the works and have your front mended. It will be a long job. Yes, sir. Meanwhile, a diesel rail car will do your work. A diesel, sir? Thomas spluttered. Yes, Thomas. Diesels always stay in their sheds till they are wanted. Diesels never gallivant off to breakfast in station masters' houses. Percy and Toby were worried. Thomas's recent accident had caused a great deal of trouble, and the Fat Controller was waiting for them with important news. Here, he said, is Daisy, the diesel rail car, who has come to help while Thomas is indisposed. Please, sir, asked Percy. Will she go, sir, when Thomas comes back, sir? That depends, said the Fat Controller. Meanwhile, however long she stays, I hope you will both make her welcome and comfortable. Yes, sir, we'll try, sir, said the engines. Good. Run along now and show her the shed. She will want to rest after her journey. Daisy was hard to please. She shuddered at the engine shed. This is dreadfully smelly. I'm highly sprung, and anything smelly is bad for my swerves. Next, they tried the carriage shed. This is better, said Daisy, but whatever is that rubbish? The rubbish turned out to be Annie, Clarabelle, and Henrietta, who were most offended. We won't stay here to be insulted, they fumed. Percy and Toby had to take them away and spend half the night soothing their hurt feelings. The engines woke next morning feeling exhausted. Daisy, on the other hand, felt bright and cheerful. Ooh, ooh, she tooted as she came out of the yard and back to the station. Look at me, she purred to the passengers. I am the latest diesel, highly sprung and right up to date. You won't want Thomas's bumpy old Annie and Clarabelle now. The passengers waited for Daisy to start, but she didn't. She saw that a milk van was about to be coupled to her and was most indignant. Do they expect me to pull that? Surely, said her driver, you can pull one van. I won't, said Daisy. Percy can do it. He loves messing about with trucks. She began to shudder violently. Nonsense, said her driver. Come on now, back down. Daisy lurched backwards. She was so cross that she blew a fuse. Told you, she said, and stopped. Everyone argued with her, but it was no use. It's fitter's orders, she said. What is? My fitter's a very nice man. He comes every week and examines me carefully. Daisy, he says, never, never pull. You're highly sprung and pulling is bad for your swerves. So that's how it is, finished Daisy. Stuff and nonsense, said the station master. I can't understand, said the shunter. Whatever made the Fat Controller send us such a feeble, spluttered Daisy. Let me. Stop arguing, grumbled the passengers. We're late already. So they uncoupled the van, and Daisy purred away, feeling very pleased with herself. She could now enjoy her journey. That's a good story, she chuckled. I'll do just what work I choose, and no more. But she said it to herself. Daisy, the diesel rail car's work in the countryside, was full of surprises. She was frightened of bulls and cows, and she remained very lazy and stubborn. One day, Toby brought Henrietta to the station, where Percy was grumpily shunting. Hello, Percy. I see Daisy's left the milk again. I'll have to make a special journey with it, I suppose. Anyone would think I'd nothing to do. grumbled Percy. Tell you what, replied Toby. I'll take the milk. You fetch my trucks. The drivers and the station master agreed. Percy had never been to the quarry before. He began ordering the trucks about. Hurry along, he said. The trucks rumbled to each other. This is Toby's place. Percy's got no right to poke his funnel up here and push us around. They whispered and passed the word. Pay Percy out. Pay Percy out. Come along, puffed Percy. No nonsense. We'll give him nonsense, giggled the trucks. But they followed so quietly that Percy thought they were under control. Suddenly they saw a notice ahead. All trains stopped to pin down brakes. Beep, beep, beep. Brakes, guard, please. But before he could check them, the truck surged forward. On, they cried. Help, help, whistled Percy. The man on duty at the crossing rushed towards traffic with his red flag, but was too late to switch Percy to the runaway side. Frantically trying to grip the rails, Percy slid into the yard. Beep, beep! Look out! The freight van was in smithereens. Percy's driver and fireman had jumped clear, but Percy was stranded. Next day, the Fat Controller arrived. Toby and Daisy had helped to clear the wreckage, but Percy remained on his perch of trucks. We must now try, said the Fat Controller, to run the branch line with Toby and a diesel. You have put us in an awkward predicament. I am sorry, sir, replied Percy. You can stay there till we are ready. Perhaps it will teach you to be careful with trucks. Percy sighed. The trucks groaned beneath his wheels. He quite understood about awkward predicaments. The Fat Controller spoke severely to Daisy, too. My engines work hard. I send lazy engines away. Daisy was ashamed. However, Toby says you worked hard after Percy's accident, so you shall have another chance. Thank you, sir, said Daisy. I will work hard, sir. Toby says he'll help me. Excellent. What Toby doesn't know about branch line problems isn't worth knowing. Our Toby's an experienced engine. Next day, Thomas came back. And Percy was sent to be mended. Annie and Clarabelle were delighted to see Thomas again, and he took them for a run at once. All are now friends, and Toby has taught Daisy a great deal. She shooed a cow off the line all by herself the other day. That shows you, doesn't it?